Hey friends, it's Jules. Welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be doing a quick little reading vlog. Maybe not so quick. I'm going to be reading Christine by Stephen King. I'm going to be buddy reading this with my friend Gwen. Her channel is Gwendolyn Kinzinger. And we recently, a few months ago, did a buddy read where we read I Was a Teenage Slasher. While we hated the book, we had such a fun time buddy reading it and roasting the book and just going back and forth with our thoughts, and it was just a good time. One of our other friends, April, is going to jump on this buddy read with us, but Gwen had mentioned that she was going to be reading this year, and I was like, I want to read it with you because I used to be a huge Stephen King fan. I used to read a lot of those books. Honestly, it's been such a long time. I don't remember what I've read. I had to write them down because I forgot. So some of the popular books that I read that I remember reading. I read Pet Sematary, Cujo, Firestarter, Misery, Night Shift, Gerald's Game, The Green Mile. Those are just the ones I remember reading. I've probably read more, but I don't remember if I did. And honestly, the ones that I did read, I really don't remember. I mean, I remember the gist of the stories, but I don't remember any details about them. So I definitely wanted to read this because I've seen the movie. I saw it when I was a kid. I think I was like 7 when it came out, but so I probably didn't watch it till I was like early teenager. I've always loved thrillers, scary movies. Like I have since I was a kid. My daughter's the same way. She has loved scary stuff since she was like 4 or 5 years old. So it just runs in our blood. So our plan is to buddy read this together, and then we're going to watch the movie Christine. I don't think Gwen has seen it. Like I said, I saw it probably several times growing up, and I really liked it. I'm sure it's probably a lot cheesier than I remember, but it should be a good time. I did already start this last night when I was on sprints with Jess. I got about 50 pages read when I was on sprints, but I did go back because I wanted to tab it and underline stuff and write in it, and like so I restarted it, and I've already got all these tabs in the first 50 pages, and I've got things underlined and I've written in it. So I'm not planning on getting rid of this. So I decided I'm going to mark it up. I'm going to write in it all the things that I don't normally do in my books. But so just some of the things that I've noticed, you can definitely tell this was written in the 80s, right? When racial words were just thrown out in print and nobody really cared about it. Like, you don't see that now. You know, and just some vulgar things that I'm like, wow, I'm like, none of this was censored back in the day, I guess. They just like be printing whatever. So yeah, so there's a few things that I marked up with that. And then there was a part in here that I was going to mention that I was like, oh, wow. So obviously, if you don't know what the premise of this book is, a kid, Arnie, ends up buying an old classic car, and it is a POS, right? It's a run down hoop-de-hoop. And he falls in love with it instantly. Like he's like, I want to bring this car back to life and restore it. And he's only 17. So, and he does it without his parents' consent. He sees this car, him and his friend are driving. He buys the car. It's crap. Okay. And his friend tries talking about it. He's like, that is such a piece of crap. Don't get it. Don't get it. And he gets it. And his parents are pissed. And just the conversations that they have, the arguments that they have in my mind, I'm like, I can totally see this playing out in my mind. If anyone knows, Stephen King is very descriptive, sometimes overly descriptive, like so many words to describe one thing, like a whole paragraph to describe one thing. Sometimes it's a little extra, but for the most part, it doesn't bother me in this. So then he had put a deposit on the car, like 25 bucks cash, and then he had to get the full amount, and he was only going to charge him 250 bucks. 250 bucks for a car. Now, mind you, this was back in the 70s. So around this time frame, it's 1978, I think. His friend is the one telling the story. So the first part that I've read so far is him seeing the car, getting the car, having the fight with the parents. His car, he gets a flat in front of someone's house, and they come out and they're very white trash. Like, again, very descriptive. And it's just so funny. Like, I could just totally envision him. Now, what I don't love that Gwen pointed out to me on another book that she was reading from Stephen King, I think it was The Long Walk, which I have read that one too. I forgot about that one. Is that he likes to write fat people into his books, like a lot, like very descriptive about people when he's describing someone, there's always a fat person in his book. So it's very like, yeah, she clearly needed Weight Watchers. She's fat. The kids, they're porky too, you know, things like that. So like, he definitely is very not so nice about some of his descriptives of people. That's all that that's only where I'm at right now. But we're kind of going to stay on pace with each other, at least me, and I think April's already quite a bit ahead of us, but like, we're just going to stay on pace and just like talk as we go. So I will keep you guys posted on how our buddy read is going. This book, y'all, I have thoughts. Okay, it definitely has 70s, 80s vibes. There's some things in here that they say that just make me chuckle or make me think about things like from like when my grandpa was around or whatever. So one of the things in here said, in one hand, he was holding a drippy hamburger sandwich on Wonder Bread. I totally remember growing up, we didn't have buns. Why do we not have buns? I guess my family just thought you get more out of bread than you do buns, which is true. You get a whole loaf of bread, you can make sandwiches, whatever. And you only get 8 buns in a package. So yeah, I totally remember eating hamburgers on bread. And the bread get all soggy and everything. Or hot dogs on bread. That was a thing. We did not have buns. My family just didn't get buns. So that took me back. Let me know. Did y'all have that? Like, it was just the thing. You didn't think twice about it. I would never think now to take a hot dog and squish the bread in half over it. But that is what we did. Anyway, so that was just funny. And the Wonder Bread. It specifically says Wonder Bread. Like now, people, there's all kinds of bread. But like back in the day, Wonder Bread was the cream of the crop bread to get. And I actually feel like Wonder Bread was too soft. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but like, I like a soft bread, but not too soft. Because if it's too soft, then like when you go to bite into it, it sticks to the roof of your mouth. And I'm not about that. Anyway, so yeah, we're just going through him fixing up this car and it like miraculously getting fixed. So turns out the guy, I don't even remember where I updated y'all last, but it turns out that the guy he bought the car from suddenly died. So they went to his funeral. Arnie and his friend went to the funeral, and Dennis, his friend Dennis, ended up talking to the brother later. Like he found him because like they went to talk to him at the funeral, and said that they were hoping to park his car in the garage because, you know, for a while until they sold it. And he's like, no. And then he found out he bought the car and was like, tell your friend to get rid of the car. That's the worst decision he ever made. And then he tells him the backstory of like what happened with this car when the original owner had it. There was a couple tragedies with it. So he's like, he should just get rid of it. And of course, Arnie's not going to do that. So then Arnie ends up paying for a space at this guy's like garage so that he can work on it. Basically spending all his time doing that. Him and Dennis's relationship's kind of, you know, not as close because Arnie's like obsessed with this car now. And all of a sudden Arnie's like, so in the beginning area, it talks about that there's always losers everywhere, which just kills me. It was like, he talking about Arnie, it was like, he was a loser, you know. Every high school has to have at least 2. It's like a national law. 1 male, 1 female. Everyone's dumping ground. Having a bad day, flunked a big test, had an argument with your folks and got grounded for the weekend. No problem. Just find one of those poor sad sacks that go scurrying around the halls like criminals before the homeroom bell and walk right into him. I've come to notice that Stephen King is good about having losers in his books, bullies, or somebody being bullied, and fat people. Like, those are just prominent in his books. But, so anyway, it talks about how Arnie is this loser, and he's like a pizza face. They call it pizza face loser. He's got the greasy zit face. But now all of a sudden, Arnie's complexion is like clearing up. So he's getting like a makeover. As his car's getting a makeover. And his car, Dennis is noticing. So Dennis went to look at his car and noticed that it's just miraculously getting fixed. So they're seeing these like upgrades happening on Christine, but they're like kind of weird. Like it said like one part of the bumper was like, looked like it was brand new, and then the other part wasn't. They're like, how does that even happen? Like you would get a whole new bumper, and like, or like the antenna was replaced. And he's like, the guy that owns the shop was like talking to his friend Dennis that was up there, and he's like, I thought maybe he was gonna like listen to the radio while he fixed his car or whatever. He's like, but he doesn't. He's like, I don't know why he did that. And then like just other little things on the car. And then like the glass on the car was like, on a side of it was like spider webbing or whatever, cracks. And he's noticing that it's smaller. So the cracks aren't completely gone, but they're going away. And he's like, how's this even happening? Obviously it's fixing itself somehow. So a little bit of time has gone by now, and Christine is getting a glow up. Arnie's getting a glow up. Arnie has a girl that's interested in him, which Dennis is like shocked by, because it's a girl who like transferred to their school. So she didn't know him, Arnie, before like his little glow up. And Dennis is like, no other girls in the school would want to be with Arnie because they know what he looked like before. And you know, like what a loser and pizza face he was. And so I'm like, this is crazy, the descriptions of these things. But so he's now has a girlfriend or whatever, and Dennis is kind of probably jealous, I would say, on that, because he actually thought he might be interested in asking this new girl out, but then realized that Arnie and her were having a connection, so he's just kind of backed off or whatever. So Arnie is talking to Dennis about like how nervous he was to ask her out, and that like he almost didn't do it. And so Dennis is just kind of like putting himself in Arnie's place, because Dennis has asked girls out before and had dates and girlfriends and whatever. But he said, I don't think I could understand the degree to which Arnie must have felt it. What he had done had taken monumental courage. It's a small thing, a date, but in our society, there are all sorts of charged forces swirling behind the simple concept. I mean, there are kids who go all the way through high school and never get up the courage to ask a girl for a date. Never once in all 4 years. And that isn't just one or two kids. It's a lot of them. And there are a lot of sad girls who never get asked. It's a shitty way to run things. And when you stop to think about it, a lot of people get hurt. You know what I mean? And like, you do think about that, like in high school, like there are girls that want to get asked out, and then guys don't have that courage to ask them out, which nowadays, like, I mean, back when I was in school, the guys asked the girls out. They just did. But now, free for all. So, which is kind of nice. It's not always up to the guy to have to ask the girl out. The girl can do it too. Same thing with marriage, like proposals. Like that's the thing. Girls are asking guys now to get married. But anyway, so I just thought that interesting. So it very much feels, you know, kind of like how I was in high school. And like, just the grossness of the teenage boys. This is chock full of it. Anyway, so now I am at the part, I just started part 2. So the book is in 3 parts. So the first part is Dennis's perspective, part 2 is Arnie's perspective, and part 3 is Christine's perspective. I kind of can't wait to get to Christine's. So I'm about 40% through. So I will be back when I have some more thoughts on this. Good morning. I am here with some updates. So Gwen has already DNF'd the book. She was like, I gave it way longer than I should have. She was trying to not DNF it because she was buddy reading it with me in April. But that's okay. April has already finished it. She enjoyed it. I think she said she gave it 4 stars. 3.5 or 4 stars. I'm not sure. I'm getting like 3-star feelings out of this. Like it's getting better for me. Like the first part just kind of was like, meh. Arnie's section is definitely about him and his connection with Christine, and then his girlfriend and things that are happening. And his girlfriend actually choked on a hamburger and almost died. But luckily somebody saw it and gave her the Heimlich. But in the process of her choking, she saw the cars like lights and stuff change, and she's like, I swear it looked like it had eyes. And so she even said, she's like, I'm not going anywhere with you in that car anymore. She's like, you are too attached to that car. Something's wrong with that car is alive. And he's like, you're crazy, what are you talking about? And she's like, get rid of the car or we're done. Of course he doesn't want to get rid of the car. there have been some murders from Christine. So obviously, if you know the premise of this book, you know that Christine is alive and runs people over. Anyway, I may have some spoilers, so if you haven't read this book or you're planning on reading this book, skip ahead. But so Christine is basically getting revenge on the boys that had originally beat her up, because while his car was parked at the airport lot, they went and trashed it. Like, several boys went and trashed his car. And so he brought it back we find out how the car's basically regenerating, replenishing itself back to normal, like before anything happens. And so we do find out, because he hurt his back somehow, and it references several times in here about his back hurting. And then, like, when Christine does like bad things, his back starts hurting, and it's kind of weird. So it's like, it's almost like her pain, like when she's getting like dented and whatever, it's like hurting his back. And so they're like connected. It's almost like a possession type thing. And he's having blank moments. So like, one of the things was, he's like, I didn't replace her windshield. How did her windshield get fixed? Or maybe I did. And like, he'll drive around for hours and not have any recollection of it. So like, he's losing time. And I think it's because the possession of the car, him in the car, the connection. So Christine, like I said, Christine starts mowing people down. And one of the parts, so Christine's odometer runs backwards. They just assumed it was broken or whatever. So after one of the mow downs, it said inside on the instrument panel, the odometer continued to run backward, as if Christine were somehow slipping back into time, leaving not only the scene of the hit and run, but the actual fact of the hit and run. The muffler was the first thing. Suddenly that heavy blatting sound diminished and smoothed out. The fans of blood on the hood began to run toward the front of the car again in spite of the wind, as if a movie film had been reversed. The flickering headlight suddenly shone steadily, and 1/10 of a mile later the dead light became a headlight again. There was a hollow punk 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 sound from the front end, the sound of denting metal, the sound you sometimes get when you squeeze a beer can. But instead of denting, Christine's grill was popped back out. A body shop veteran with 50 years experience in putting fender benders right could not have done it more neatly. Christine turned onto Hampton Street even before the first of those awakening by the screaming of her tires had reached Moochie's remains. The blood was gone. It had reached the front of the hood and disappeared. The scratches were gone. As she rolled quietly toward the garage door with its honk for entry sign, there was one final punk as the last dimple. This one in the left front bumper, the spot where Christine had struck Moochie's calf, popped back out. Christine looked like new. So when her odometer is going backwards, it's basically fixing her. Then Archie doesn't understand how his back, he can't remember what he did to his back to hurt it. He was just making up the story because he didn't remember it. Well, now all of a sudden, we're a couple murders in, and he's getting questioned for things, and everyone's basically doesn't want anything to do with him. His girlfriend left him, his best friend's in the hospital. His parents are suspicious because, is it a coincidence that the people that wrecked his car are now being murdered? But you know, he has an alibi for these times that these murders have happened. But anyway, so he's remembering. He says he had pushed her, and inside the odometer ran slowly backward, and some 50 feet beyond the door his back began to really throb, and he kept pushing, and then his back began to scream in protest, and he kept pushing, muscling it along on the flat slashed tires, his hands going numb, his back screaming, and then he remembered. He remembered how it had suddenly become easier to push the car because the tires were healing themselves magically, kneading themselves together without a scar and then inflating. The broken glass had begun to reassemble from nowhere, knitting itself upward with small, scratchy, crystalline sounds. The dents began to pop back out. He simply pushed her until she was right enough to run, and then he had driven her, cruising between the rows until the odometer ran back past what Rupperton and his friends had done, and then Christine was okay. What could be so horrible about that? Nothing, a voice said. And he's also seeing the dead owner in the car with him sometimes. So like, it's crazy. And then they're also like, sometimes they smell like like a rotten egg smell. So, you know, like in books that you've read about like demonic possessions and stuff or whatever, there's like a rotting, you know, egg smell or a rotten smell. So they're getting that sometimes too. Sometimes Arnie smells it. Sometimes the girlfriend smells it. Yeah. So obviously possession. I'm having a pretty good time with it now. I'm really liking, I think I like Arnie's section maybe better than the first one. The first one just seemed more like a guy telling a story about his best friend and like a high school crap and whatever. But I am excited to get to Christine's. I don't know when that's coming about, but I'm on page 345 and there's 525 pages. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there, y'all. But I'll come back when I have some more thoughts on this for you. I finished Christine this morning. I am going to settle on 3 stars. I definitely enjoyed the part 2 better, which was Arnie's part. The first part, it was full of like I mentioned before, it was full of all the gross teenage boy stuff. The second part was a lot of his relationship with him and his car with Christine, as well as his girlfriend, and all the crazy crap that went down that he was doing, and then the murders. And then the last section was Christine's section, which I actually thought I might enjoy more, but I kind of really didn't. It was shorter, but it kind of just went through like that final stage of them taking Christine out, or trying to. So, yeah, so it wasn't, I mean, obviously you can tell by my tabs that this first section and half was tabbed a lot more. Like I didn't tab any of this. So, I just didn't really feel like there wasn't anything really that was like stuck out to me that I really thought I needed to tab or underline or whatever. But yeah, overall, I had a pretty good time with it. I'm glad that I read it. And yeah, so Gwen did end up DNFing it. April gave it 4 stars. I'm giving it 3 stars. So overall, I think it was a great buddy read. Wasn't as fun as the first one I did with Gwen because she ended up DNFing it, but still overall was a fun time. We are still planning on watching the movie, so I'm going to keep this vlog open until we watch that so I can give my final thoughts. I kind of want to just compare it to what I'm remembering of how much I liked it when I was younger, to see if it's really that or if it's really cheesy. So yeah, so I will come back with my thoughts on that, and then we can wrap this vlog up. Friends, I'm back to finish up this vlog. So we watched Christine this past weekend and I still loved it. So it was not as cheesy as I thought it was going to be. You know how you watch movies like decades later and you're like, that was so cheesy, because you know, like their graphics and all the cinematics were not as good back then. Y'all, this movie came out 42 years ago. I was expecting it to be super, super, super cheesy. It wasn't. There were some parts of the movie that like followed the book word for word. And I was like, oh, that's on point. Exactly. There were some parts that were like completely different, but there was the same things happened, maybe at a different time or a different location or whatnot from the book. But overall, like I really liked it. And it was so funny because my husband is a huge car guy. So he definitely was like, well, I'm watching it with you. And he had seen it before too. And the cars in the movies getting crushed, we were just like, no. So my husband's dream car was actually in the movie. It was Arnie's best friend's car. So a 68 or 69 Dodge Charger. My husband loves those cars and they're super expensive now. But like back in the day, they were not. And the amount of cars that they crushed in this movie was sad. But it was like, and we know like the whole engines and stuff were not in these cars that they were crushing up, but still, like, it broke our heart to see all these beautiful cars getting crushed up. And I actually was like, and when I was watching it, I was like, I wonder how many cars they actually crushed making these scenes for this movie. And even the part when, because my husband was like, you know how they did, because Christine like fixes herself, right? So that happens in the movie, and I was waiting for it to be super cheesy looking, like, or like skip scenes to where she's wrecked and then she's not wrecked, you know what I mean? But no, like you literally see things popping out, which is obviously just them playing the clip in reverse of it getting crushed, and then they reversed it and made it look like it was. But yeah, so like I was impressed for the time frame that they made this movie. I thought it was pretty good. I love the music in it, and like when Christine's doing anything like shady, it's like that y'all know what song I'm talking about. I'm not singing because I suck at singing, but like I literally was like over here through the whole movie. It was just so much fun. I loved it. Gwen enjoyed it. She didn't like love it, but she said it was good. So we were on Discord together while we were watching it and like discussing while we're watching it. And we both were like, oh, that's exactly like the book says, or, oh, that's exactly what happened. There got to a point where she's like, I don't know how this is going to end because she didn't finish the book. But overall, I think she enjoyed it okay. It was it was fun watching it with her, but like I loved it. So the book, average. The movie, loved it. Which is kind of on point with a lot of Stephen King books. Like I really like the movies, and the books are just kind of meh, you know? So Pet Sematary, Misery, Gerald's Game, Carrie, like all of those, I love the movies, and the books were just either average or I couldn't get through them. Like, so seems to be a theme. Definitely pick up more Stephen King books because, you know, like I said, growing up, that's all he used to read. Well, I don't know that I love his writing. I do love the movie adaptations. So obviously I'm going to watch all the movies. But anyway, that is it for this vlog, you guys. Let me know, have you guys read Christine? Do you read Stephen King books? Is there a book you recommend that I try and pick up again? Yeah, let me know all your comments and thoughts below. And until my next video, be yourself, be awesome, be kind.